Wow, it's really great for me to be here. When we started doing this at hackNY in 2010, it was a whole different world. Just real quick about me. I'm a computer science professor at NYU. I've been doing that since 1999, which I understand is longer than some of you have been alive. I co-founded two nonprofits that are dedicated to helping the New York City tech ecosystem. One is called hackNY. I'll talk quite a bit about that today. One's called CSNYC. The mission of CSNYC, if I get to talk about it, if I have enough time, I'll talk a little more about it. But basically, we're trying to get computer science education available to every kid in the New York City public school system. That's the K-12 system, which is something I've been pretty excited about lately. I also am an investor and a mentor to a lot of technologists and their companies in New York City. Sounds like I do a lot of different things, but at its core, all of these things are mentoring young technologists. I feel like I'm at my best when I'm mentoring young technologists, and since you guys are all young technologists who mentor young technologists, I'm really excited to be here to talk to you guys about this. So I'm just curious, how many people have not yet organized a hackathon? Okay, how many have organized one? How many have organized two? Three? Four? Okay, we've got a couple at four. Okay, that's really amazing. What you guys are doing is really inspiring to me. We had no idea that all of this would end up happening when we first started doing hackNY. So we've done 13 hackathons right now. The first one was on April 2nd, 2010. I just want to kind of set the tone for the talk and show you the video that we did to raise money for that hackathon. 2010, just to put this in perspective, it was just starting to, I'll put this in more perspective later, it was just starting to be cool to be involved in entrepreneurship, to be involved in technology. We had the dark ages of tech, being a young person in technology were kind of just ending. Maybe we were on our second year of the upturn. And you know, I got together with a faculty member at Columbia, Chris Wiggins, many of you know him, and some other people, and we put on, we helped the students put on the first hackathon. So let's just watch that video.
Hi, I'm Akiva, and I'm from Columbia's ACM, and I'm here at NYU's Korth Institute helping to plan the first ever New York City-wide hackathon going on April 2nd to April 3rd at New York City's Korth Institute in conjunction with NYU's ACM, CCNY's ACM, Tech at NYU, and Columbia's Application Development Initiative. And we're here because we need your help. We're sitting right now in the Korth Institute in NYU. This is where we're going to be holding our 24-hour hackathon on April 2nd at 7 p.m. It's going to go for 24 hours until April 3rd. We're going to be having some of the biggest startups in the New York City area. We're going to have some of the finest coding ninjas in the New York City area. Students from CCNY, NYU, Columbia. We're going to get them all together here in this room on April 2nd. Hey, Mr. Korth. Just kidding. That guy's just a picture. But I want to tell you what's going on April 2nd. We're going to have everybody come in here, we're going to have some lectures, and then we're going to start coding. And what's that mean to code all night? And what's hacking? So some people think hacking is this really evil thing where you're like trying to infiltrate the American government. And that's like 50% of the time. And then 40% of the time, it's something completely different. And then 10% of the time, it's that again. But let's talk about that 40%. That 40% of the time is what we're going to be doing over here in NYU, in Mr. Korth's building, where we are right now. Awesome. What are we looking for? We're looking for the involvement of people all throughout America to help us plan this event. And even if you're not in America, but you still want to help us, that would be sick. So what are we asking for? At the very base level, we're asking for $2,000. That'll help us cover things like pizza, things like food, things like drinks, things like transportation for students who aren't in the New York City area. All of these things cost a lot. And $2,000 will just help us cover the extreme base, allowing us to have the most austere of hackathons. But with your help and your support over the interweb, we can get this event to be gigantic. Gigantic like Godzilla, Godzilla like a meteor from space, gigantic, that comes and crushes everything on this planet, gigantic. That's what we're looking for. And so we're asking you for your help, for your support. Okay, so I'm here with Eric Hong, president of NYU's ACM chapter. So Eric, tell us, what kind of students should we be expecting to come to this hackathon?
That's a great question. We are expecting students of any experience level, from the beginner who just picked up Java to the PhD finishing up a thesis, or from the rock band enthusiast to the greatest PHP ninjas.
Awesome. We're really excited for this event. We think this hackathon is going to be the bomb. And we hope that you're excited too. And if you are, give us a little bit of a voice, support, and come out to our event, April 2nd at 7 p.m. at this building, the Quran Institute at NYU.
Right, so there it began. We just held our 13th hackathon. We hold one every semester. But think about what we said in that video. First of all, we were trying to raise $2,000. You guys are all so spoiled with the budgets that you have right now. We had exactly 0 sponsors except Kickstarter supporters. I had to convince the NYU administration this was an okay thing to do. We had to tell the world what the word hack meant. It was a completely different time. For us, the original goals of the hackathon was to break some stereotypes about what the I just realized I'm reading the wrong notes. Was to break the stereotype of what a hackathon of what building software really was. To show people that it could be a collaborative effort, that it doesn't have to be an adolescent boy in his mother's basement sipping Coca-Cola building applications. Believe it or not, we had to tell the world that stuff back then. It was also a way to teach college students how to use tools that we didn't teach in the classroom. And most of all for us, we were looking to build the New York City ecosystem and build the young people that were building things in Manhattan. So we started a summer fellowship program, which I'm going to talk about in a bit. This was a way to get, to source really good candidates for the summer fellowship program. So let's just move this computer out of here and see what I was supposed to say. Okay, so so how did we do that? You notice that he talked a little about the Columbia ADI, the NYU ACM. He didn't talk about the programming team, but I was the coach for the programming team, CCNY, ACM. What we did is we leveraged the other organizations that we were all involved in to help bring people in. And I think if there's one thing I want you to take from this talk is that that's a really valuable tool to leverage the organization. So you're all hackathon organizers. You all have a community. You all have an organization that puts on these hackathons. Like, that is a source of power to do other things. And you can leverage that community to do other things you want to see in your community. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what we've done in New York City, but what I really hope you get out of this is, wow, we have different strengths than New York City, but we could do some really interesting stuff wherever you are from. And how do I play to those strengths? How do I leverage my current organization to do really cool things and bring more opportunities to people within that organization? So how I got involved. Like I said, I'm an NYU professor. I survived the first dot-com bubble. In New York City during the first dot-com bubble, we had a big community. It was mostly a business community. This is in the days before Meetup, in the days before hackathons, obviously. It seemed like most people that were writing software in New York City, not all, of course, during those days were in it to get rich. They weren't necessarily in it to change the world, which is kind of how it feels right now in New York. And there wasn't a lot of professional development for developers. Like, developers had to go and find that on their own. Then, of course, the bubble popped, but we did build some infrastructure. There were organizations to go to, events to go to, and what ended up happening when the bubble popped, all of that investment money, the investment money that was funding the startups was also funding that infrastructure. So what ended up happening is all that infrastructure level that we built, it all just went away. And then we entered what I referred to earlier as the dark period of computer science education, or at least for me it was. So it's worth noting, again, if I'm going to give you a historical perspective, that there are peaks and valleys in interest in computer science at universities. There was a peak in the 70s. There was a peak in the 80s with the advent of the PC. There's a peak again in the 90s during the dot-com bubble, and now there's a peak. Maybe this peak is real, and maybe some of the work that people in communities like yours are doing will make this. I like to think of it as, the activity goes like this. How do we build, if that's a sine curve, how do we build a floor that you never go too far down below and have to start back at zero, which is basically what happened. But during this period, the main dialogue, the main story in the popular press was outsourcing. All the tech jobs were going to go overseas. There was a race to the bottom. People weren't going to make any money. It was if you studied CS, you were going to be unemployed for the rest of your life, and you'd be competing against people in countries where wages are a lot less. The truth of the matter is that story, in my experience, was never true. Our graduates, although there were fewer of them, always had close to 100% placement rate. People always need people to build stuff. People who build stuff always want to build things. Like there were always opportunities. So I think the end of that dark period was actually a dark period for the rest of the world. So what happened, in my opinion, is the crash of 2008. All of a sudden, young people looking to get jobs realized finance wasn't necessarily a lifelong job, that had peaks and valleys as well. The entrepreneur lifestyle was kind of getting popular again. You had companies like Google that were started sort of at the end of the dot-com bubble that survived all through the really dark period and started doing really, really well. And that started becoming part of the zeitgeist. So we started having conversations in New York City. How could we rebuild the infrastructure so that it sustains the next economic downturn? And I don't know if we just started to see, you read a lot of articles about how VC money is harder to come by. That's absolutely true. I don't know if this is the end of the good times. I don't think so. I think there are a lot of great companies out there getting funding, and there are a lot of great companies in the queue ready to go public. I still think we're kind of going in the right direction, but eventually there will be a downturn, right? Now, how do we build things in a sustainable way so that when the downturn happens, it doesn't go away like it did after the first bubble? So a bunch of us that had survived the first bubble were talking about this stuff. How do we do things differently this time? Being a college professor, I identified a couple of parts of the problem that I could work on. The two most important being strengthening the connective tissue between the universities in and around New York City, and helping to foster a community of young people that like to build. And this is that community, and you guys are fostering those communities every place, and it's really an exciting time to be involved in this. And at the same time, I got involved in some other organizations, the New York Tech Meetup, NYU had a venture fund, and again, this goes to my theme of you get involved in a bunch of organizations, you see how these organizations could be leveraged to help the other organizations in the group. For example, the first hackNY hackathon and everyone since. Well, let me just say a few words about the New York Tech Meetup. It's the largest meetup in the world. We have over 50,000 members. We do an event in a room a little bit bigger than this one once a month where we show tech demos. And we at hackNY leverage New York Tech Meetup by having the winners of the hackNY hackathon demo at the New York Tech Meetup, thus getting a lot of excitement for both organizations. So that's what I'd really like to challenge you guys to think about, how you could do that to help your localities. I certainly wasn't the only one doing this. Other people were using their strengths, using their contacts in the fashion industry, in the finance industry, in the government, in the advertising industry. Again, these are things that were already historically strong in New York, and trying to get them to help the tech sector. So, it's not always useful to compare places with Silicon Valley, but those things, there were some things that we could do better. I said one of them was the connective tissue between the universities and the startup community. And if you look, even as early as 1939 in the Valley, Hewlett-Packard started. It came out of Stanford. And it's a really interesting story about a guy named Fred Terman that helped fund his his students, Hewlett and Packard, and got them their first client and got them government contracts. And I think, as an engineer, you look, how did Silicon Valley happen? I believe it came from the engineers. So, so we worked a lot on that problem. What we did is we started two programs, the biannual hackathon, which I talked a little bit about, and the summer fellowship programs. And a little bit of my thinking on why we started with those two programs, if you look at the foundation for a modern computer science educator, which of course is something I think a lot about, there's learning the fundamentals, data structures, algorithms, how to program, how an operating system works, how the hardware works, all of that stuff. That's really super important. And that's what we do really well at NYU and other CS programs around the country. I think the other two pieces are, learning the language du jour, learning the tools du jour, the stuff du jour, the things that are trendy now. And of course, then there's the actual getting a job, actually being out in the business community, learning to work on teams, things like that. So again, I think my department and computer science departments around the world, they do a great job teaching the fundamentals. Obviously, programs could be modernized, but I don't think that the language du jour should be necessarily what we teach. Every few years we get into language war conversations. I don't think that's useful. I think people asked 2 years ago. People were asking me, "How come you guys don't teach Ruby on Rails at NYU?" And it's hard for people to understand that that's the language du jour. We don't need to do that. I remember in 1999 they were saying, "How come you guys don't teach ASP programming at NYU?" And of course, few people still do ASP programming. And in fact, I think the people who just learned ASP programming and were making decent salaries back then, when the bubble popped, if they didn't continually learn the new thing, they kind of had to move on. And a lot of those people don't work in building anymore. A lot of them moved on. Yet the people, I think, through all these periods I'm talking about, that got the fundamentals of computer science. And I'm not saying you have to be a computer science major. You could get those fundamentals elsewhere. I'm just saying that's what we do really well in computer science departments around the country. And I think in communities like this, we criticize those programs. But I would make the case that they're doing exactly what they should do. So, so in order to get people working together and learn the stuff du jour, as I called it, I think hackathons play a very important role. Interestingly, now hackathons play an important role in recruiting. When we started, we didn't think that it should be a recruiting place. At the time, everyone was trying to start a company. People were trying to get someone to, the term code monkeys became popular. Everyone was trying to get people. We wanted it to be a safe place that was recruiting free. Now in 2016, I don't think that's appropriate, but that's how we thought of it back then. Then the thing that we thought would be a good way for students to find new opportunities in smaller companies was the summer fellowship program. So our summer fellowship program, what it is our fellows, we call them, they intern at startups during the day, and they have we have an educational program for them at night. And then some things that the fellows started doing have now become permanent parts of the program. So a few years ago, the fellows would start putting on workshops, teaching each other different languages, different techniques, different hacks, whatever. That's become a full-time part of the program. We also have now former fellows live with the current fellows, and they help organize around things so that us old folk don't mess up everyone's style. But again, in 2010, this was a really hard. It's hard to imagine that in 2010, startups did not recruit at colleges. So this was also a way of us kind of aggregating the demand of startups and exposing our students. Everything we try to do is to expose our students to more and more opportunities. So I have another video that I'm only going to show like a minute of this that the fellows created last year at the end of the fellowship, which is really fun. And if you look closely, you'll probably recognize one or two people that are here.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Shloka, and SRK coming at you with a little song that we like to call Midtown HACKNY. Can't commit to that repo. If it don't work, then try pseudo. This one for them startups who are harder, pitching two VCs but styling, wildin', living it up in the city. Hackathons, Palladium, and emotion, Eric Gibbons. Oh, from Chris, oh snap. Free food Mondays and Wednesdays, and from Chris, oh snap. Side channel out of control, man. From Chris, oh snap. Tech meetup VIPs, yeah. From Chris, oh snap. And we'll bet about that code. Break it down. Free swag is gonna come to ya. Free swag is gonna come to ya. Free swag is gonna come to ya. Cause HACKNY gonna code for ya. Cause HACKNY gonna code for ya. Cause HACKNY gonna code for ya. It's summer and we're taking New York. Don't believe us, just watch. Oh! Hey, hey. Come on. Ha. Don't believe us, just watch. Hey. Come on. Ha. Don't believe us, just watch. 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 Hey, hey, hey. Oh, stop. Wait a minute. Check in friends so they can visit. Split the group. Red and blue. Play in 2 rooms and a booming talks from Jonah, Eric, and Code Academy. Workshops that are so dank and hanging with the USV. Oh, from Chris, hell's no. Staying off the street and sticking with the code. From Chris, hell's no. Throw shade on the West Coast. From Chris, hell's no. Gonna disrupt the status quo. From Chris, hell's no. And we'll bet about that code. Break it down. Free swag is gonna come to ya. Free swag is gonna come to ya. Free swag is gonna come to ya. Cause HACKNY gonna go for ya. Cause HACKNY gonna go for ya. Cause HACKNY gonna go for ya. It's summer and we're taking New York. Don't believe us, just watch. Hey man, what's that you got there? I need it and I watch. Hey. Don't believe us, just watch. Don't believe us, just watch. Don't believe us, just watch. I need an Apple Watch. Hey, 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 oh! Before we leave, let me tell you all something. Midtown HACKNY. Midtown HACKNY. Midtown HACKNY. I said Midtown HACKNY. Midtown HACKNY. Midtown HACKNY. I said Midtown HACKNY. Midtown HACKNY. Get pushed, just force it. Bash RC fails, just source it. Cross-platform, just port it. Know how to search and sort it. Come on, get pushed, just force it. Bash RC fails, just source it. It's summer and we're taking New York, and don't believe us, just watch. Oh! Hey. Come on. Don't believe us, just watch. It's hot in here. Don't believe us, just watch. 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 Hey, 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 oh! Midtown HACKNY. Midtown HACKNY. Say Midtown HACKNY. Midtown HACKNY. Midtown HACKNY. Midtown HACKNY. Say Midtown HACKNY. Midtown HACKNY. And come on! Midtown HACKNY. Midtown HACKNY. Say Midtown HACKNY. Midtown HACKNY. Midtown HACKNY. Midtown HACKNY. Say Midtown HACKNY. Midtown HACKNY.
I think that's enough. But yeah, so it's a lot of fun, and you know, it's evolved a lot. The first year, you know, Chris and I had to seed the program with our students. If I remember correctly, we had 12 students the first year. The first year we had, I think 6 were NYU students, 4 were Columbia students, where Chris teaches. 1 was the winner of our hackathon, Ian Jennings, who's somewhat responsible for dragging Swift to his first hackathon. And then we found this kid from Princeton who was really great. And so now we keep it around 36. We figure that's the right amount, that's the right size to have a formation of a cohort. We don't want to get it too big because we really want to have that community feeling to the hackathon. So I wanted to say something about CS education, so I'm going to say really quickly, I'm just going to do some bullet points. A few years ago, I had the opportunity to start New York City Public High School. So I feel like New York City's come a really long way, and what we need to do is kind of push CS education as far down the education stack as possible. And I'm talking, straight down to elementary school. So I had the opportunity to start a New York City public school that has a 4-year curriculum with computer science. It's the Academy for Software Engineering. In fact, I have to fly home tomorrow so that I could be at their first graduation. The way we started it is we just took 9th graders, and we took 9th graders and 9th graders and 9th graders, so it took 4 years to get us to full capacity, and those first kids are now graduating. And it's one of the most rewarding things that I've done in my career. Again, we took the New York Tech Meetup community, the hackNY community, all the different communities, and we leveraged them to get donations to start the school. We ended up opening a second one. My phone's telling me I'm done. We ended up opening a second one. We ended up bringing some programs to New York that needed volunteers. Again, we leveraged the communities. And so I ended up taking a 3-year leave from NYU to start my second nonprofit, CSNYC. The mission, like I said, is to get computer science into every school in the New York City public school system. There are efforts like this going on around the country, and I think if we really want to put that floor on the sine curve, we really need to push it down there. We really need to get, I'm not going to say everyone should be a computer scientist, but I think 5-10 years from now, everyone should know how to instruct a machine to do something. And I encourage you to get involved in that. I handed off the organization to someone else. I got at 122 schools. He has since doubled the number of schools. New York's the biggest school system in the country. We have 1,700 schools, so it sounds like we made a dent, which we did, but we have a very long way to go. So in September, I returned to NYU full-time, and I'm looking forward to getting back in the rhythm there. And just while I was preparing this talk, some thoughts came to mind. I just wanted to say, it might seem like New York City is far ahead of some of the places where you guys might want to do some of these activities. But in 2010, I remember Facebook saying they would never have a New York City engineering office. Now they have a huge office. They're building their entire deep learning team because they pulled a colleague of mine from NYU into their office who basically invented neural nets. And they basically gave him an unlimited budget to go and build their deep learning team there. Coincidentally, IBM Watson moved into a building right across the street from that. Google has a big office. Twitter has a big office. Spotify has their main engineering office. We've come so far. And a lot of the companies, so those are the non-New York City based companies that are in New York that are important to New York. But we also have homegrown companies like Etsy, MongoDB, Kickstarter, Major League Hacking. And these are 3 of the 4 of those companies are B Corps. We have a very different community. Because we used the communities that existed and like-minded people that really wanted to create something good, 3 of the 4 companies I just listed are B Corps that have a double bottom line, that want to promote some other human good besides making money. To me, that feels really different from what I just described to you. It felt like during the first dot-com bubble. And hackNY is rethinking the best way to contribute. Some of the things, we have all this great stuff going on. We're still dismal with diversity. So hackNY is focusing on that. Our first, we've come a long way there too. Our first class, 11 dudes, 1 female. This class has 40% female students. So we're making progress, but I think that's really, we need to rethink what hackNY is there for, and I think that's probably a big issue that we should be attacking. So I hope you enjoyed that. When you're planning your hackathon, first and foremost, think about how to make that hackathon sustainable, because Major League Hacking is such a great tool. Because if Chris and I had to be involved to kind of keep the continuity. College students graduate every 4 years by definition. Chris and I are kind of there to keep the continuity. Now MLH can take the continuity for all you guys and keep an infrastructure. So you just need to start feeding more people into the system, and they could train them and they could run hackathons for you at places like this. And then the other thing I'd urge you to think about is, now that you have a sustainable hackathon, start thinking about how you could leverage that community to make more opportunities for people in that community and for people outside the community to draw more in. That's what I got. Thanks.